2 rose bushes. Same variety, same garden center, planted the same weekend, a few feet apart in the same bed. It is now midsummer, and one of them is a tall, leafy fountain throwing out one flush of blooms after another. The other is short, scraggly, half bare, pushing out a sad little flower here and there. Same sun, same soil, same rain, and yet one is racing ahead while the other is stuck in slow motion. I have watched this exact situation play out in my own garden more times than I care to admit. And I can tell you from 40 years of experience that the gap between those 2 bushes almost always comes down to 7 things. 7 tricks that the bigger bush got, and the smaller one did not. None of this is the tired advice you have already heard 1,000 times. This is the real mechanical reason one rose explodes and another just sits there. And trick number 4 is the one that is going to stop you in your tracks. It feels completely wrong, like you are sabotaging your own plant, and it is one of the most powerful things you can do. Let me tell you what the bigger bush knew. If you are new here, welcome to the Gardening Grandma. Hit that subscribe button right now. Let us get into it. Trick 1. Get the bud union right, or nothing else matters. Before we touch feeding, pruning, or watering, we have to talk about the one thing that is already decided before your rose even wakes up: how deep you planted it. Most roses you buy are grafted. A flowering variety has been joined onto a tough rootstock, and the joint between them is that swollen, knuckly lump near the base called the bud union. Where you set that lump relative to the soil line quietly controls how fast or how slowly your rose will ever grow. Here is what most gardeners never discover until the damage is already done. If you plant with the bud union sitting high and exposed, that joint dries out, bakes, and gets stressed. A stressed union is slow to push new canes, so the whole plant idles in low gear for its first year or two. Set it correctly, and the union stays protected, the graft heals fast, and the plant pours its energy into top growth, instead of just trying to survive. My rule now is simple. In mild, warm climates, plant so the bud union sits right at or just barely below the soil surface. In colder regions, bury it a couple of inches under to shelter it from frost. And here is the bonus most people never hear. When you bury that union, the flowering variety above it will often start sending out its own roots over time. A rose growing on its own roots is frequently tougher and more vigorous for the long haul. Planting depth is not a fussy little detail. It is the foundation every other trick is built on. Trick 2. Water the feet, never the face. The habit that is silently throttling more roses than almost anything else is how you water them. The instinct is to grab a hose and shower the whole plant from above, leaves and all. It feels generous, it feels like a good soak, and it is quietly capping your rose's growth in 2 separate ways. First, roses are thirsty, hungry plants with deep roots, and a light sprinkle only wets the top inch of soil. The roots never have a reason to drive downward, so you end up with a shallow root system that dries out the moment you skip a day and can never support fast top growth. Here is what most gardeners never discover until the damage is already done. Deep roots are the engine behind every fast-growing rose. Water deeply and less often. A long, slow soak straight at the base that drives moisture well down into the soil, then a gap before the next one. Second, when you splash water all over the foliage, you are rolling out the welcome mat for black spot and mildew. Those fungal diseases strip a rose's leaves bare, and leaves are the solar panels. A rose covered in healthy green foliage is photosynthesizing at full power. A rose that has lost half its leaves to black spot has had its engine cut in half. My rule now is simple. Keep the water at the roots, keep the leaves dry, and if you do water from above, do it early in the morning so the sun dries everything quickly. Trick 3. Feed it like the glutton it is. Here is where roses flip the script on almost every other plant in your garden. A lot of plants resent being fed too much. Roses are the opposite. They are flat out greedy, and a rose that is running on empty simply cannot grow fast no matter what else you do. If your rose is pale, slow, and stingy with blooms, there is a very good chance it is just hungry. Feed it on a proper rhythm, a balanced rose feed as growth kicks off in spring, and again after the first big flush of flowers to fuel the next one. But here is the trick that separates the people growing decent roses from the people growing monsters, and it is an old secret almost nobody outside Rose Society circles ever hears: alfalfa. Plain alfalfa meal or pellets, the same stuff sold as animal feed. Scratch a few handfuls into the soil around the base, or steep it in a bucket of water and pour that tea on. Here is what most gardeners never discover until the damage is already done. Alfalfa contains a natural compound called triacontanol, a genuine plant growth stimulant. It acts almost like a hormone, and it is especially good at triggering what rose growers call basal breaks, those thick, strong new canes that shoot straight up from the very base of the plant. Those basal breaks are the canes that rebuild and expand your rose. A bush that throws several of them in a season looks like a completely different plant by autumn. Feed the rose richly. Slip in the alfalfa, and you have handed it both the fuel and the signal to grow. Trick 4. Steal its flowers. This is the one I promised you. To make your rose grow faster and bloom more, you have to take its flowers away from it. Sometimes the very first flowers you have been waiting all season to see. I know exactly how that sounds. You bought a rose to get roses, and here I am telling you to cut them off. It feels like self-sabotage. It is actually the smartest thing you can do, and once you understand why, it will change how you treat the plant forever. Here is the mechanism. A rose does not flower for your benefit. From the plant's point of view, a flower has one job: to be pollinated, fade, and form a seed pod, what is called a hip. And the moment a rose sets a hip, it receives a powerful internal signal that says mission accomplished. Growth and flowering wind down because as far as the plant is concerned, it has already done its job for the year. Here is what most gardeners never discover until the damage is already done. When you snip off each bloom the moment it starts to fade, cutting back to a healthy set of leaves before it can ever form a hip, the plant never gets that signal. It stays in striving mode, convinced it still has a job to do, so it keeps pushing fresh growth and a whole new round of flowers. And here is the harder, even more powerful version for a young or newly planted rose. In that first year, pinch off the flower buds before they open at all. Sacrifice the blooms entirely. Every bit of energy the plant is not spending on flowers goes straight into roots, canes, and structure. You give up one season of modest flowers, and in return you get a vigorous, established powerhouse that outgrows and outblooms its neighbors for years. My rule now is simple: steal the flowers, and the plant never stops striving. We are halfway through. Drop a comment below and tell me which of these tricks you are already doing and which one surprised you. I read every single one, and if you have not subscribed yet, do it now. New gardening advice every week. Trick 5. Cut harder than you dare. The single most common way people hold their roses back is being too gentle with the pruners. They give the bush a timid little trim, nipping the very tips, terrified of cutting too much. And the rose responds with weak, twiggy, tired growth, because a soft prune sends a soft signal. Roses are built to be cut hard. A bold prune does not weaken the plant, it triggers it. When you cut a cane back significantly, you concentrate all of that root system's stored energy into far fewer growing points, and the plant answers with thick, strong, fast new shoots instead of a tangle of thin ones. Here is what most gardeners never discover until the damage is already done. Where and how you cut matters as much as how much. Make each cut just above a bud that faces outward, away from the center of the plant. That bud becomes a new shoot, growing away from the middle and opening the bush into a vase shape with a clear, airy center. That open center lets light reach deep into the plant and lets air flow through, which keeps foliage dry and disease-free. My rule now is simple: cut out anything dead, anything spindly and weaker than a pencil, and any two branches rubbing against each other. Be brave with the pruners. The rose is not asking you to be careful. It is asking you to be decisive. Trick 6. Give it a magnesium wake-up. This one is small, cheap, and weirdly effective, and it targets two specific weak points that quietly slow roses down. The fix is magnesium, and the easiest source is plain Epsom salts. Magnesium sulfate, the same stuff sold for soaking sore muscles. A spoonful or two worked into the soil around the base in spring, or dissolved in water and poured on, can make a real difference. Here is why it works. Magnesium sits at the literal center of every chlorophyll molecule, the green pigment that lets leaves capture sunlight. Here is what most gardeners never discover until the damage is already done. When a rose is short on magnesium, the older leaves go yellow between the veins, while the veins themselves stay green. A rose with yellowing leaves is running its solar panels at half power. Top up the magnesium and the foliage greens up deep and rich. Photosynthesis ramps back up, and growth follows. There is a second payoff that rose growers swear by. Magnesium encourages those basal breaks we talked about in Trick 3, the strong new canes erupting from the base that rebuild and enlarge the whole bush. My rule now is simple. Pair an Epsom salt feed in spring with the alfalfa from Trick 3, and you are hitting the plant with everything it needs to push fresh canes from the ground up. Trick 7. Tuck the roots in and keep them calm. The last trick is about everything happening below the soil, out of sight, where the real growth race is actually won or lost. A rose roots want two things: even moisture and a steady, cool temperature. Bare soil gives them neither. It swings hot and cold with the weather, bakes dry in a heat wave, floods in a downpour. Every one of those swings is a small shock, and a shocked root system keeps pausing growth instead of running steadily. The fix is a good, generous layer of mulch. Spread a thick blanket of organic mulch, well-rotted compost, bark, leaf mold, whatever you can get, keeping it pulled back an inch or two from the stems so the base can breathe. Here is what most gardeners never discover until the damage is already done. That mulch layer is doing several jobs at once. It insulates the roots, smoothing out the temperature swings. It holds moisture between waterings so roots stay evenly hydrated instead of yo-yoing from soaked to bone dry. It smothers the weeds that would otherwise steal water and nutrients straight out from under your hungry rose. And because it is organic, it slowly breaks down and feeds the soil life beneath it, building exactly the rich, living, crumbly earth that roses adore. My rule now is simple. Tuck those roots in with a proper mulch blanket every spring, and you remove the single biggest hidden source of interrupted growth. So let us go back to those two bushes. The bigger bush was planted at the right depth. It was watered deep, and at the roots with its leaves kept dry. It was fed richly, with a secret hit of alfalfa to spark new canes. It had its flowers stolen before they could ever set hips. It was pruned hard and open. It got a magnesium wake-up for greener leaves and stronger basal breaks, and its roots were tucked under a calm, cool blanket of mulch. The little one got none of that. Do even a few of these for your own roses, and you will genuinely see 2 to 3 times the growth. Taller, leafier, healthier plants throwing flush after flush of blooms all season long. Which of these were you getting wrong? Drop it in the comments. Be honest. For most people, it is the watering or the timid pruning, and there is absolutely no shame in it. I did both of those wrong for years before someone finally told me. If this was helpful, hit subscribe and share it with one rose gardener who is watching their bush sit there doing nothing. They deserve to know. Until next time, happy gardening. Take care of yourselves and take care of those beautiful gardens of yours.